Hello and welcome to Harmoniously podcast. Today with us we have Alena,
Hello, welcome.
and today we are going to talk coaching. Today will be an episode focused on coaching and especially psychosynthesis, which is a particular framework that both Alena and I studied, and we are really looking forward to share with all of you. And also we thought about sharing something that is one of the map using psychosynthesis, that is the egg map. And that's because, well, it's still around Easter time, spring. So it's really sounds like the theme, the rebirth, the egg that is the symbol of this rebirth.
Yeah, so that's how we came up with this topic. We were talking about springtime, renewal, rebirth, and the spring equinox, and how appropriate that is when you think of the acidoli egg diagram, because all the potentiality of a newness, of new life, of rebirth, of potentiality is all in that diagram. And this is a tool that we use in coaching.
Exactly. And so we're going to share with you, we're going to explain what is this egg diagram and also how you can use it as a practical tool in your day-to-day life or in your practice, in your personal development, and so on. So stay with us. But before starting this beautiful discussion, we're going to start this podcast with an arrival practice as usual. So I invite all of you to close your eyes, and also Alena, if you want, you can join us. And just start focusing on your breath. Allow yourself to be arriving to this moment, to be arriving to the here and now, to be arriving to this podcast. Just allow yourself to drop in. Take one last breath. And then slowly open your eyes. Yeah, the arrival practice are always beautiful. I thank you as well, Alena, when you would do a coaching session, they're quite longer, but it's nice for a podcast to just take a couple of breaths together to really settle the ambience.
Yeah, I find it just so grounding and brings you into the present moment and just provides that serenity that we need to focus on what we have at hand. So it's a great practice. And like you said, it can be as short or as long as you want.
Exactly. So let's go with this egg diagram. I like to share it quickly at first. Okay, let's go. I'll share my screen. So I have, this is a colorful one. Now I have a lot of screens open. Okay, this is a colorful one. It is it's the one I use in my manual. So there is a little bit of English, but it was also in Italian so Roberto Saggioli was Italian, right?
Yes,
So
absolutely. He was born in 1888 in Venice.
1888. So when we talk about psychosynthesis, psychosynthesis sounds still pretty new, and also like everything that brings to the table is really in an innovation on what we use or what we think of psychology and all the other frameworks. It's really innovative, but it already has also more than 100 years. So with all the how you can say, the practice that has been passed down, so it also has all this long experience. And I think it was because the world maybe wasn't ready yet for this more complex view of the mind, of the psyche.
Yeah, the
which is
human of humanity, right? Of the human being, because that's why he
Mhm.
was, I just, sorry to interrupt you, but I was just, I get,
No, go ahead.
feel that it's really important to understand that he was the first person, he actually coined the term psychosynthesis, right? And he saw this is also part of transpersonal psychology. And he uses it to, when dealing with humans, because he was a psychoanalyst, it was to create that space for the whole human being to show up, not just the mind, right? And not just the trauma, but
Mhm.
that potentiality, the will, the higher self, the spiritual being that we are, all of that part of us can be involved in this self growth and self development and transformation.
Yeah, exactly. And how would you define psychosynthesis?
Wow, you're
I
asking me?
also Yes, because I also know that you had some interesting or funny comments about the name from people that did not know what it was because it's like psycho and synthesis.
Yes, that's very true, and that was shocking for me because, I'm used to the word, psychology or psychiatry and psycho or psychus, just the mind, to deal with the mind, and so
Hmm.
when I told people I was a psycho-spiritual or psychosynthesis certified life coach, people would just stop, and I could feel that they didn't understand it, and they're like, "Oh, that's a big word." And then someone else, like, later told me afterwards that that name scared them because they think of psycho, like crazy, like someone who's a psycho. And I was like, "Oh, no, that has nothing to do with it." But it's just interesting how people, obviously, when we're in our little bubble, right, of psychosynthesis
Mm.
coaching and we know what it means for us, I love the term because it's psychology, it's synthesizing and synthesis, it's universal psychology too, where we have these, different modalities that we can implement and use, with visualization and just so many techniques and tools that I love the term. And I never thought of it as a negative term. So I changed. Now I don't tell people I'm a psychosynthesis life coach in a group setting because I don't have time to explain all of the facets and why it's so amazing. I just tell them I'm your best life coach because I really believe that by doing the work and, working with psychosynthesis, we are able to achieve that space within ourselves, within our life, create that space, create that life where we are able to, really fully show up in ways that we hadn't before. So yeah, that's really my experience with it. But how about yourself? Have you had any
Mhm.
negative experiences with the term, or how do
Well,
you describe yourself
about the
as a coach?
term, yes. Well, it's more that it's hard to understand at first, right? Psychosynthesis. It's
Mm,
not as well known as can be psychology, psychotherapy, and so on. Which is funny because also, as we commented before, that psychology and psychotherapy also has the word psycho in it, but for some reason, when you psychosynthesis, I guess people hear psycho and synthesis, two words that, especially synthesis, is not very common,
mhm.
and that's what raised more questions. But the idea of synthesis, it's also the idea of integration, right? So it could be psycho-integration maybe.
Yeah, yeah, because
Because
it's
that's yeah.
this part, sorry, the personality with the spiritual, right? Just uniting
Hmm.
those, synthesizing. So yeah, integration is a big part of it. Hmm.
Yes, because that's the idea behind psychosynthesis. What Rasta Jolly brought with this framework is to integrate all the parts of ourselves, right? So we probably have some understanding or more or less conscious understanding that we are a whole, but at the same time, we're not conscious of all the parts of
Right.
ourselves. And that's the work with psychosynthesis of or a personal development work, or even like what is a spiritual path. It's becoming whole. And of course there is this, especially I would say in spirituality, there is this that sounds a paradox that is like I'm whole, but I don't feel whole. How am I whole? And that's one of the question that psychosynthesis answers, if you want. So,
Yeah, and I think the egg diagram shows that too.
mhm,
I don't know if you're able to pull it up again while we talk about
yeah,
it a little bit more,
I'm
because
gonna
then
share
I
it
think it's
again.
yeah. So it is the shape of an egg, right? Obviously,
Hmm.
so whatever that symbolizes, the rebirth, the renewal of life, the newness of life, or birth in general. So it's like, being able to live in that space, and
Hmm.
then so the whole idea is that if you can bring it up, we can actually look through
Yes.
it and just see how he kind of how he depicts
Hmm.
um, well, humanity or life and psychosynthesis
Hmm.
in this egg, this very simple object, right? That, we eat for breakfast, even those people who eat
Yeah.
eggs. So it's, something very common. But he's been able to take a symbol, take an object that's very common and basic in life, and explain the psychosynthesis well, it's not really a methodology, but the approach, I guess,
Hmm.
to therapy, to coaching in our case, with this egg. So it
Hmm.
starts, I know it's in Italian, like you said, but so we'll start at the bottom of the egg, which is the collective, no, wait, number, that is
The
number
lower
one in the
unconscious. Yeah, that's the collective
lower
unconscious.
unconscious. There you go.
Yeah,
So the
excellent.
lower unconscious. So maybe if we talk about that, that's like a little bit of the trauma, right?
Hmm.
That we carry
Yeah,
with us.
yeah. If you want, again, like he also, I think you wanted to share the symbol of eggs in general. As you said, the symbol of egg. The egg has been throughout history used as a symbol of rebirth, right? And that's also that's why it's being used for Easter as the symbol of Easter, is the symbol of rebirth. And has been used by astrology as a map for the for our psyche. So let's start from the idea that we maybe the mainstream knowledge that we have our lower unconscious or an unconscious, and then we have that's from Freud and Jung, a ego, super ego, or a I, and so on.
The
So,
id and the ego. Yeah.
mhm. So we have an idea that there is part of our psyche that is unconscious, and there is part of our psyche that is what we feel or what we identify as the I, right? And astrology use the egg, so it makes it of a more complete with different layers. Right here we have this egg in which we have this lower unconscious, middle unconscious, higher unconscious, the I at the center, which is the center of awareness and will, and on the top we have the higher self, which is also another term that has been uh,
Coined by
coined by astrology.
Jolie.
Yeah,
Hmm. Yep.
it's I heard that used a lot, and
Yeah. But he was the
very few
first one.
people very few people know that it was astrology that coined this term, the higher
And
self.
that's one thing I do have to say is that, like, Asa Jolie was such a brilliant soul,
Mm-hmm.
and he was so forward thinking, and he was so ahead of his time. But I never heard of his name before I took the program, the coaching
Something.
program. He's not as well known as Jung and Freud. Like, those are
Mm-hmm.
names that everyone,
Yeah.
has heard of at least once. But
Yeah.
Asa Jolie, who did so much,
Mm-hmm.
he's like a secret. He's still,
I know.
not many people know about him. And it's actually very interesting. And I think that's part of who he was too. He wasn't after fame or fortune. He was just there to do the work. And he
Mm-hmm.
was really committed, to like, to synthesizing, right, these
Yeah.
kind of polarities, right, in life and even in psychology, and bringing them together.
Mm-hmm.
So that, going back to the egg diagram, so basically, so people can use this to understand themselves as they see themselves in this egg, so they can look at it and say, so the red part, because it's nice that yours has color,
Mm-hmm.
so it's the lower consciousness. And that, I think too, if we kind of describe that, so that we're accepting all of us, right? We talked about that before too, the whole egg, not just one part of it, not just the good, not just, the trauma, not just what we desire, our higher self, but the whole being that we are. And so that's even, like, I think, our automatic, like how we breathe and digest, like that's part of who we are that we don't have to think about, which is amazing when you think about all the work that our body does for us, that we or oblivious to. You know, we don't have
Yep.
to say, okay, now it's time to breathe. Now it's time to swallow. Now it's time to digest. If we had to do that, we couldn't use our brains, you know, to have this conversation, for example.
We'll probably be overwhelmed to think of all the chemicals work
Yeah.
that goes on when we digest any food.
Right.
But yes.
So this is part of, but it is part of our being. So that's
Mhm.
part of the bottom of the egg, and then the middle of the egg, right, which is the
Yeah.
middle unconsciousness. Isn't that
Mhm.
like our day-to-day life, how we show up in life, what we
Yes,
do, the things we do every day?
exactly. So the middle unconscious, it is what is our field of consciousness, which means that we can have access to this information, but we don't use it at this moment, right? The typical example that is used is like, I don't know, maybe a phone number that you know by heart. Like nowadays we don't, but like, you know, something that you know, but in this moment you don't need, so you're not gonna use that information, but it is easily accessible.
Mhm.
And then in the middle of unconscious is where we find the I. Around the eyes, so the eyes consider the center of awareness and will. So the eye has a passive and an active part. The active part is the will, this energy that regulates all the psychological functions, and the awareness, which is the passive part, which is also the witness, the testimony. And that's the middle unconscious. And then we have, and that's a little bit in the lower unconscious, we can find what Freud talk about, the the unconscious part. Jung also a little bit. We can find those those ideas as well in here,
Yeah.
a little
He
bit in
studied
this
under
part.
Freud too, right? He did study under Freud, and I know
And
he
with
knew Jung as
and
well.
yeah, and Jung. You can pronounce both. Jung is the German pronunciation, Jung is
Yes.
the American pronunciation. And then we have, and this is very unique to Assagioli, or at least he was the first one introducing this. And it is the superconscious, the higher unconscious, this blue part, right? Would you like to
Yeah.
share what we find in this beautiful blue part?
Well, and so that is like our best self, right? That's what we can aspire to be. That's when we're using, I guess the example would be very simple, right? Using another example. If you have a car that has 6 gears and you're always driving it in second or third, it's not using its maximum potentiality.
Mhm.
It's made for all of those gears from, you know, reverse 1 all the way to 6. So if we as human beings have this, you know, this higher consciousness, this opportunity to be fully show up and fully blossom, like the flower that we talked about before, you know, blossom and bloom into all of our being of who we are, our uniqueness, you know, that what makes us ourself. And we're not doing it because we're too caught up either in the lower unconsciousness or just doing life, right? The middle
Mhm.
unconsciousness, that we like forget that there's this whole other realm that we can connect with, and we can, you know, grow to, and we can become, and we can manifest like that full expression of who Alena is. And I know I'm not there yet, right? But that's what I aspire
Mhm.
to do. That's what I aspire to be, as my best self. And I try, you know, every day with different practices, just like you know, to be a better being, to be a better version of myself, but not be obsessed by it either, you know, and not just only be focused on that, but just accepting that there's more to me than I even know, and discovering and exploring that part of me, those parts of me, the unknown.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's why, like, some people also divide this in like the lower unconscious also being the past, if you want, the middle unconscious being the present, and the super conscious or higher unconscious being the future. It may be not
Mm-hmm.
exactly this way, but that give us a great idea, or maybe a better idea or understanding of what this diagram is.
Yeah.
And then on the top, we have this beautiful star that is the higher self that is put here just for convenience, and the convenience of creating a map, right? Because a map needs to be a clear image of something. The reality is always more complex. And that's why many psychosynthesists say that the higher self is actually everywhere, because you could also call it a soul, the soul. So the soul
Right.
is present also in the lower unconscious, in the dark night of the soul. It's present here right now, and it's present there. But for the sake
And
of the map, we put it on the top.
also just, to elaborate more, that's also like the intuition, right? Inspiration, intuition, that other part of ourself, the creativity, because we are creative beings, right? And we often don't think of ourselves as that, but that's part of that higher self and the higher consciousness.
Mm-hmm. And then if we see here, there's this, it's like little threads, how you call it?
Tracks?
It's not like a fine, a
It's a
straight
broken
line.
line. Yeah, it's a
It's a
broken
broken
line.
line. Okay, it's a
Mhm.
broken line. And this is on purpose, because one of the quality of our psyche is that it's permeable. So it's broken line all around, because like there is the collective unconscious outside, what Jung refers to. But Asa Jolie didn't study much of that, study more of the personal, the I, the person itself, so how one individual can become more whole. And there's also like broken line inside the egg, because the material from one part to the other can go. So the idea actually is that from the unconscious, both higher and lower, whatever is unconscious become more conscious, right? So that the field of consciousness of what we are aware of gets bigger and bigger. And I like the egg, because in my image, I mean, had this image of like, okay, this is an egg, because like when an egg actually grow, the yellow part slowly become like the baby chicken. I forgot the
Oh,
name.
the egg yolk. The egg yolk.
The
Yes.
yolk, yeah, become the baby chicken, and grow and becomes the whole egg, till like it's ready to break free from
Hmm.
the egg. And so I really
Right.
like this idea of like, okay, the work here is become more and more conscious. And so that little yolk, that's what I am now, grow within the whole egg, and then I'm ready to break free.
Absolutely.
That's my
Yeah, yeah.
that's my
And
image
it
with
kind of,
this egg.
yeah. And just kind of going on to that point, it's like the butterfly, right? The butterfly in the cocoon, the pupa,
Mm-hmm.
when it's
Same.
ready, it breaks open and then it flies away. So we are all that. We have all of that in us too. And it's wonderful when we coach. And I know you've seen it with your clients as well, to
Yes.
see the transformation happening with our clients that
Mm-hmm.
come, either with the issues, challenges that they're not able to resolve, and obstacles that they can't seem to, work around, or that are, just overwhelming for them at that moment. And after working with, psychosynthesis, with this approach,
Mm-hmm.
to coaching that we use that works so well. And, we have guided meditation, guided visualizations, affirmations. There are so many different tools that we incorporate into our toolbox. Um, after a while, they transform and they're able to fly on their own. So that's what
Mm-hmm.
I tell my clients too, that, we have like a basic 3-month package that I coach with them, and then they can, if they have the option, to renew it. But usually after 1 or 2 of those packages, they pretty much have enough techniques and tools to work things out on their own. And they've learned, that they've not just learned, but they've kind of integrated into their life, into their thought process,
Mm-hmm.
so many of these psychosynthesis tools that they can figure things out on their own from that new perspective. And
Mm-hmm.
then we just have check-in calls, whether it's once a month or quarterly. We have sessions together just to keep, reinforcing. But it's just really, really powerful. And I find it so fulfilling as a coach just to see the progress. And it happens over and over again, and just that joy too. I think that's the big part of it. Like you said, being, when you think of the little chicken, the little butterfly, it's a wonderful
Yes.
celebration, right? When
Mm-hmm.
they break through their shell, or they break through the cocoon, and they're flying, they're fully manifested at that point. And there's nothing more fulfilling, I think, as a coach, than seeing that in your
Mm-hmm.
clients.
Yeah, exactly. And while you were saying that, I had this image of, and well, I guess I would have to say, I use a lot of imagery. So, so I had the image of just being a coach, also like being a mother, and I guess as we are women, like that's our approach to coaching. But as a mother, the goal is to make your kid independent. So as coach, our goal is to make our clients empowered and 100% independent.
Right, right. And I think that's really the key to it. It's just, this is not meant, for me anyway, psychosynthesis and coaching is not meant to be done forever and for the rest of your life. It's simply something that you kind of come together and we work as a team and we have a plan and we, make just like, I guess, a coach with a sports, right? A sports team or an athlete. You work on what, your strengths and your weaknesses. You develop more of your strengths. You recognize your weaknesses and your weak points. You find your superpowers. You put a lot of attention into that, and you just kind of uplift and work on focusing on the path that most brings them joy, the one that's the most fulfilling, and making those choices and having those, integrating those habits and practices that will help them to get there.
Yeah, I think the most valuable thing to work with a coach is the fact that so the coach helps you to see those blind spots, number one, because like, and even if you are a coach, have this external point of view, someone that supports you in seeing the blind spot that you cannot see, even though you have all the tools, that's really invaluable. And that's one of the main things to work with the coach. But the other things that is beautiful is, as you said, the coach will support you to find your own way. And at least maybe this is me, but I found that it's really hard in this world to find your own path, because it's just much easy, or not even easy, but we are conditioned to look outside of us. Or since we're a kid, to go to school and they teach us that this is the only way or only few ways to do things.
Right.
And actually it's not, and be able to break free from this idea that the choices are only limited, but
Absolutely.
actually they are limitless. Only a coach can
Yes.
support you with that, and you need that support. You need that other person that with you believes you, that no, what you feel that is true for you, and you of course need to go on this journey and try it out and test it out, and then continue to adjust. And you will have to continue to adjust because your path is in unexplored territories, right? What society tells you is a road that has already been built for others, but your own path is an unexplored territory, and the coach will be there with you as a cheerleader to support you in this journey that it's already hard to figure out yourself. To figure
Like
out
you
that
said,
you have this opportunity. Yeah, please go
no,
ahead.
no. And I just want to add, it's kind of like an exploration. When you think back, before, when we didn't have airplanes and we didn't have, GPS and smartphones, people would get in boats and they would chart their course with the stars, and they would go where they thought there was something that they could find, like another, continent or country. And I think it's that exploration. That's what we're doing, but it's an inward exploration where we're really getting in touch with what's important to us.
Exactly.
What is our purpose? Why are we here? All of those deep questions that we don't necessarily have the answers to alone. But when you're being coached, when you're receiving, like you said, the key really to the lock, because it's like we've been put in boxes through, whether it's cultural, whether it's religious, whether it's just simply our own limiting beliefs and thoughts,
Yeah,
right? Which
even our
we're going to talk about.
parents
Right, the
sometimes.
parents and those sub-personalities that
Yeah.
that live with us, our little, the little voices in our head that tell us you can't, or that you're not good enough. All of those things that were at one point perhaps there to protect us when we were little children and we needed that guidance. But then we've grown up, but those voices are still there limiting us. Just so we, like teachers too, like you said, maybe you had a teacher that said, oh, you can't sing or you can't dance, and so many people think, oh, I can't do that. I was told I could never do it. And then they don't break that myth. It's a myth. But they don't know. So to explore and find out, can I really? Maybe I can. Let's see, and just, it's fun. It's really fun too.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah,
I'm really fascinated when I
freeing.
see stories of people that actually break those rules and just create something that is so unique and innovative. And eventually that ends up being um, not only the greatest choice for them ever, but like people admire them, you know?
Right.
And anyway, it's all this to just again just mm, reiterate that a coach is really what can support you and see what's different and what you can create yourself. But going back to
Yes.
the egg diagram, because I will also like to share how the listener can use this egg diagram for their own growth, for their own
Okay.
journey, right? And it's
Hmm.
true. I think we discussed that before, you and I, that when we coach, the egg diagram is not necessarily a tool that we take and share with the client unless they're interested in that. But it's something that we keep in mind. And when we guide them through, we keep in mind, okay, that maybe maybe we're going right now, we're going to the higher unconscious and to the lower unconscious. But as today we're talking about the egg, we can share how the listener can use it for their own personal growth.
Yeah.
And maybe I
Well,
can share it again.
yeah,
Go ahead.
share it again. And I think that just even having, now that we've spoken about it, I think planting the seed, understanding
Mm-hmm.
you'll never look at an egg the same way. I think when you crack the egg open to make your
Yeah.
omelet in the morning, it'll have a different significance, because once you look at the whole being, as an egg, and you see that, that yolk in the middle, that's tiny in the beginning and grows and grows and grows into a new being, it becomes more meaningful. And I think that we can just look at our lives like that. I don't know if there's anything particular that people need to do with it, but having
Mm-hmm.
this concept, which is so universal, so simple, so basic, just internalizing it and seeing that there is that North Star as well, that light shining. And we use
Yes.
that a lot, shine your light
Yeah.
brighter, and you are a diamond, all of those things. That is your unique light, right? And just aspiring to that and having, a North Star, having a goal. We also talked about the will with Asajoli, how,
Yeah.
when you have a desire, when you have an intention and you work towards it, you move towards it, because everything needs action too. I think that's an important thing. It's not just, oh, here's the egg and you will become your higher self by staying, where you are right now and not doing anything differently or not taking any action. They're part of the process is learning, right? Maybe reading books, learning from others, learning from people who have gone before you, motivating, getting inspired, taking action. And if you've been doing something for your whole life or for the last, I don't know how many years, and it's not serving you, it's time to change what you're doing, right?
Mhm.
And incorporate new practices. So there is a lot involved in it, but I think just having that example, just having that, vision, the visual of the egg, I don't know, for me, it says everything now. Like I can see that is complete. And when you think of the egg too, just how magical it is that out of nothing, or out of actually cells in the females, and if it's a fertilized egg in the male, come together and energetically merge, right? Synthesize, become one, and create a new entity, right, in this egg that has everything it needs to survive. It has the outer shell that gets harder to protect it. It has that egg yolk, the yolk or the center, the eye, that has all of these ingredients, all of these um, cells and chemicals and processes that are going on inside of it without any external, just the heat of the mother, right? That mother hen that sits on the egg to get it to hatch. I want to just share with you
Yeah.
something that was actually very beautiful. It just happened outside my house 2 weeks ago.
Mhm.
Florida, we have the mourning doves here,
Yeah.
and they're beautiful, birds that are very they're very common here in Fort Lauderdale, in South Florida. And one decided to put its nest on top of, I have like a solar panel. So, on top of the solar box, it created a nest. And I saw it and I thought, oh, that's interesting. And she laid, I think she only had one egg because I only saw one little chick was born. But for 2 weeks, she literally did not move. Every time I'd walk by, she sat there, she would look at me. She never flew away. She was dedicated. She knew what she was doing. She was hatching new life. And then once the little chick was born, they flew, they disappeared, and the nest was abandoned. And so I just thought it was so appropriate with spring, with Asajoli's egg, with the conversation I knew we were going to have
Sure.
today. It just, it kind of gives you that renewed faith and that hope and spirit, that life will go on. And like you said, there's always a new opportunity and a new chance for each one of us too. So I actually have these little Easter eggs that are kind of cracked. They're Easter lights, but I don't know if you can see that they're cracked. And
Yes.
that's like the symbol, they're kind of cracking. And so I thought that was very appropriate for our eggs as we progress, as we transform, and as we outgrow the egg, we're able to expand. And yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. And they're also the light. So they crack
light.
with light. That's beautiful.
Yes.
Yeah. So once again, going back to the egg diagram, and as you said perfectly, like it's beautiful as a coach. When we coach a client, we keep this in mind without actually using as it's a map. It's not a tool. We have other tools, but it's important to keep this map in mind. And I will invite everyone to keep this map in mind. So, and I want to give some practical example. And I would say that often, maybe, when there's a frustration, anger, let's say, quote unquote, something that we label as negative emotion, right? That's because that's normally when there's something, when we're happy, we normally don't stop. Maybe that would be nice to do, but we don't stop and start reflecting, why am I so happy? What's happening, right? It happens more with emotions that are unpleasant. Oh, I'm so frustrated, I'm angry, and so on. What's happening? What is wrong, right? And we often, because of this, let's say, mainstream psychology, which is not what studied at the university, but it's just like this knowledge that it became mainstream. We often, or many people think, okay, I'm frustrated because my mom did that when I was a kid, or because this happened 10 years ago. Yeah. And this has the, I think, although maybe it can be true, sometimes it can be true that there's some frustration that has the roots in something in the past. I think there's often we just fossilize with a story, right? And so remember this map, and invite everyone to remember the map in the sense that, okay, if I have a frustration, if I have anger, if I have anything that is unpleasant, it's okay to go in the lower unconscious and try to not really I would not say try to extrapolate answers, in this sense that again, like mainstream, so people that are not they're not trained normally try to find understanding and answer, and try to think, oh, because when I was a kid this happened and this happened, and relate and connect the story to a frustration of this moment, right? So I would invite people to ask different kinds of questions. So despite, yes, something can be coming from the lower unconscious, and maybe it's a call to go deeper, and if it's important, go see a psychology or work with a coach or whatever it is that if you go to a session, you will be evaluated. But I invite you to also ask yourself and try to think of what could be coming from the higher unconscious. And that's really what I would like. I would like to offer more as a tool using this map. So if you have a frustration and anger, anything that you are asking yourself the why, this famous question, why is this happening? Instead of try to create a story that comes from something in the past, ask yourself, what is life calling me? What are the qualities that wants to be embodied in this time in my life, or that life is calling me to learn? And also, so what are the qualities? What is the potential there? what is the talent, and so on. All this question, what does want to be, what does want to come from this part, from the future?
Can I add to that too? Because
Of
I love what you're
course.
saying. Yeah. Yeah. And I love how you call the diagram a map, because I never thought of it as a map, but you're right. There's some direction there. And so I think what you're saying is really important, being called to something like the hero's quest. Each one of
Mm-hmm.
us is the hero of our own life and the protagonist of our life. And so usually there's a frustration or a breakup or something goes wrong, and you're being called to something else, called to and move to a new place, or take on a new job. But there's an ending or some kind of frustration, and then you're being called to leave what leave your comfort zone, leave your house, maybe go to a different city, or even students who are going to go to college, move away from home and live in a new environment and learn and grow. So you're being called away from that. And usually, like you said, the pain part, it can be a story that we say, oh, I'm a victim and this happened and that happened. Or like you're inviting us is to look at it like more of an invitation to grow and say, how can this serve me? I mean, this has happened to me. And if we believe that everything that's happening to us right now in our life, no matter how sad or how negative it can appear to be, it's usually an opportunity to grow. It's an opportunity, an invitation. So a calling, if you will. And so if you take that invitation and you go on that journey, and you, like you said, you explore, you find out, you ask yourself questions, you learn maybe some new things that you need to. It's not necessarily pleasant, right? It can be very frustrating. It can be very an uphill type of a situation. But just like trees grow strong roots when they have wind. If trees never had wind, they wouldn't develop that embedded connection that keeps them solid in storms. And we're just like that as a human. If we go through life and everything's easy and we don't have any issues or challenges, like you said, we're joyful, we're fun, but then we don't have that profundity, that depth. We don't go deep to connect to our roots and see, solidify them and create that inner conviction and strength that we do when we expose ourselves, when we're vulnerable, and when we go on these adventures. So that is life. So I think that's the image that I see, is that the egg also in that symbol is the embodiment of the hero and the hero's quest, as you've been sharing, that you can kind of embrace. And like you said, maybe you need therapy to complement the coaching if there's a lot of trauma to be healed. And sometimes going through the process of coaching, you meet up with them depending on, what it is that you carry with you in your heart and in your psyche. And sometimes the recognition in itself is like a healing. Just seeing these opportunities, seeing this pain, connecting with it and not running away from it is enough to be able to take what you need to learn from it and keep moving forward in a positive way, or not just being where you are, but owning who you are and not running away from yourself.
Exactly. And I was thinking, I would like to, while you were sharing, there was a couple of quotes and stories that came in my mind. And one was, he who thinks he can and he who thinks he cannot, they're both right. And that was related to the fact of okay, you can be a victim or you can think of this opportunity, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
it's your choice. It's your choice to decide of this frustration. I can tell myself I'm a victim to this past, or I can choose to use it to grow and become a better human being or a better self or happier, whatever is our goal. And then also and I may not quote it correct perfectly. It's a story that I take from Sadhguru. And so the story says that there is this man who studied, I think it was a monk, studied with monks. And he always wanted to go to India and to really meet a real yogi. And so go around India and try to look for yogi and go here and there, and it takes so much time, and finally he found a yogi. And he goes there, it's like, can I ask you a question? And he's like, okay, sure. So what is the meaning of life, right? Or the big question that we all have. And he said, oh well, life is a summer breeze on a beautiful flower. And the man said, what? What? It's summer breeze on a beautiful flower? What? But my master, like I've been inside with him for years, he said that the life is suffering. And the yogi said, oh, well, that's maybe his life. So
That's
again, like,
perfect.
it's
Yeah.
your choice how you make it.
And it's what you believe, like you said, your journey to self-realization.
Mm-hmm.
It's your own very unique journey, and you get to direct how you want it to be, and you get to interpret how things happen to you. If you're that victim again, like, and you're suffering through life, and life, gives you the short end of the stick, and a lot of people like to believe that. Or you can have those affirmations that say, good, better, best. Everything is wonderful. Everything that's happening to me is getting better and better, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
living my best life. You can choose to, coach yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think those are part of the tools that we give with the affirmations as well. When I work with my clients, usually at the end of our session, I always say, what words or affirmations or thoughts would you like to leave with? And they tell me, and then I write them down and I share it with them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's their like affirmation, for the week or until our next session.
Mm-hmm.
And that they can kind of come to that whenever they have a crossroads, whenever there's a situation that causes frustration, pain, they can always call on that affirmation and repeat it in there, as many times as they need to. It's kind of like breathing through something. You repeat it over and over and over until you get through it. And it's like I don't want to call it a security blanket, but it's like an empowering tool that's very simple. But like you said, you can choose to tell yourself whatever you want, and whatever you tell yourself is true because
Yeah,
you'll believe it. So
exactly. And I want to conclude just adding on this concept that I totally understand if some of you, and I've been there too, that you feel like you're a victim, or you feel like, but actually, this is true, and it's true that maybe something bad happened to you, or it's true that you don't feel your best, and that's true. We're not saying that it's not true. That's true.
and life is
And that's,
cyclical. So sometimes we do
yes,
feel pretty crappy,
I,
but
yeah,
it's a transitory state. It's not permanent.
yeah. But I think that's the beauty of sharing this tool, once again, this map. So that we want to share that, yeah, that's true, that you probably had what you had in your life and you probably feel this way. It's true. And we want to share this map because we want to remind, or maybe bring to your consciousness that you never heard before, that there is actually also something more, and there's a higher conscious, and there is actually a way that you can see the same thing on a flip side, on a different light, and you can do that. And maybe you never heard this before, that you could actually see the same thing that happened to you in a different light and reframe it and retell the story. And you can, and maybe you won't be able to do it right one day, or let's say right, quote unquote right, in the sense that maybe still it won't work the first day or the second time or the third time, but it will eventually work. And so I think this really open up open up new possibilities to anyone who listening, especially if they never heard before, that yes, actually you can look at from a different light, and everything you can ask different questions. So anything that happens, any frustration, any anger, anything, you can open the question of not only what happened to me in the past, but what are the opportunities here for me.
That's beautiful. And the one thing that, we kind of talked about in a roundabout way, but it's also, and this is also part of the psychosynthesis process, is disidentification, or, stepping, kind of creating that buffer between what's going on in your life, right, and your higher self, and just kind of creating that space. And I
Yes.
actually read something when I was just looking up like information, and just like, wanting to understand a little bit more about eggs and symbology. So this is what I found is that the present, we can imagine the present is an egg, right? That's laid by the past because it was, it came together in the past, and it holds within its shell, the potentiality of the future. And so it's like it's magical, So, and so is our life, if we see it that way, and we can kind of disidentify with our reality right now, just to give it a different perspective, just to, like people say sometimes, just a breather, just to give yourself that space. And you can see how everything around us is pretty special, and we're very blessed, to be living right now in this world, even though there's a lot of turmoil and a lot of insecurity and so many challenges. It is a great time of spiritual awakening and awareness, and we're really involved in part of that transformation.
Thank you for sharing. And this reminds us that we're going to add the link for a meditation that we recorded already, and it's the Disidentification meditation. So it's a exercise from Psychosynthesis, and as Alena just explained, helps you to create a little space between the I, the awareness, the self, and what is that you think you are. So your body, your mind, your emotion, and so on. That's a great exercise.
Yeah, it's a great, and you recorded it. I love it. Your voice is so soothing, and so, yeah, it's very powerful, very beautiful meditation. Thank you for recording that and sharing it with us.
Thank you. And so thank you, Lena, for joining us. Oh.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. And we are going to do other podcasts on psychosynthesis, on coaching. So if you have any question, if you want to ask any question, if you want that we talk about a specific topic, we're here. Just comment, send us an email.
Yeah, and also, wherever we are, if you like this podcast, that helps, right? Because then if we have people who like it, then it's great. And then we can also put questions. I think some of the platforms have opportunities for comments and questions. Yes. But thank you for recognizing our effort, right, to share this with you by sharing your love with us.
Yeah, sharing it, like it, follow us on whatever platform, we're Spotify, YouTube, Google, Apple, and so on. So once again, thank you everyone for listening. Thank you, Lena. Thank you, Harmoniously.
Thank you.